This happened last year. Me and a couple of other friends decided to explore an old bungalow in my locality which was supposed to be haunted. Now, when people see an abandoned bungalow, they think it's haunted, but people like to talk, don't they? We didn't believe a word of the place being haunted and decided to explore for ourselves. I stay in a bungalow which is near the abandoned one, so we decided to have a sleepover at my place and then sneak out during the night, have a look, snap a few pictures, and return back. My mom had gone to Pune for a relative's marriage, so that made the sneaking out easy. It was the summer holidays and we had a lot of fun. There were 3 of us, me, my friend Shivani, and another friend, Vidya. Some background about the house: it has been uninhabited since as long as I can remember. The current owner of the bungalow is in the United States and doesn't care about it. Maybe they are selling it to some builder next year. It's a pretty desolate place. It's at the very end of the road and has a wasteland behind it. Not many people care about it anymore. It's been long forgotten except when people talk about ghosts. It is said that the ghost of some previous owner haunts the place. You can hear laughing in there, the gate opening and closing by itself, and the glow of old oil lamps when no one is inside. It was just too tempting for us to stay away from. We decided to reach there at around 7:30 so it would be sufficiently dark and not too late. The bungalow is quite the picture of carelessness. The walls were covered with algae. The weeds had overgrown, and the thorns of some plants made it difficult to walk without getting your lower legs scratched. Foolishly, I had worn shorts, and my legs were cut and bleeding by the time we walked the distance of about 3 meters from the gate to the front door. It was a moonless night, and it is said that at such times the spirits are unrestricted by the veil between the living and the dead. Nevertheless, we decided to go in using the windows, since the door had a big rusty lock on it. The windows were very old and seemed to belong to the times long gone by, and did not have any glass on them, which made getting in rather easy. Shivani was the first to go in, followed by me and Vidya. We switched on the flashlights on our cell phones, which filled the interior in an eerie light. I had this feeling of sudden sadness and that someone was watching me. I brushed it off as being guilty about trespassing in someone else's property. The feeling continued, and it felt like someone was playing a voyeur on me. It was a sick feeling. As we were taking a look inside, I was constantly turning my head around to check if there was someone behind me. Vidya asked me what was wrong. I told her and Shivani about it, and Vidya agreed that she felt the same. Shivani said I needed to relax. The interior of the bungalow was plain and unfurnished, with a big hall, living room. A flight of stairs in one corner of the hall led up to the first floor. There was the kitchen just beside the hall and a bedroom or storeroom to the left of the kitchen. We decided to go to the first floor and see if we could find ourselves any ghosts. Vidya complained that she was not feeling all right and would stay downstairs. Shivani and I started going upstairs, and I was overcome by a feeling of sudden and utter terror. I couldn't breathe, and I wanted to flee the place. My eyes started watering and my head hurt. A short scream escaped my throat, and Shivani looked at me from where she was standing at the top stair. She asked if I was okay, and I just nodded my head and said that it was my dust allergy acting up. I slowly got to the upper floor, and we decided to check the rooms ahead. There were 3 bedrooms up ahead and a door which led to the terrace. We decided to check the first room. As we were about to open the door and peek in, we heard someone coming up the stairs. Thinking it was Vidya, I went to take a look to find that the stairs were deserted. Strangely, the sound continued, but I couldn't see anyone. It was like the sound made when you walk around in flip-flops. Vidya was wearing heels, so she definitely wasn't playing tricks on us. I stood there glued and frozen like a statue, listening to the sound of walking approaching closer to me. I screamed for Shivani, who came out running from the room she was looking in, and she heard the sound too. Her face showed the terror she felt, and she gripped my hand and we rushed downstairs. I felt an icy breath of air pass me. We saw Vidya sitting peacefully downstairs on the floor as if in a trance, and she seemed to be meditating. We were scared as hell. We rushed downstairs and shook her. She was startled and asked us why was she sitting down. She seemed genuinely confused, and as we were thinking about the situation, we heard someone laughing upstairs and ran out of the house through the windows. We ran really hard. I had a stitch in my side and was sweating. When we stopped to catch our breath, I took a look at my friends and was shocked to see that Vidya's face was deathly pale. Her pupils had dilated to such an extent that they nearly covered her hazel irises, She was bathed in sweat, and when I felt her forehead, she had a high fever. She seemed to have gone in that trance-like state again. I shook her and asked her if she was okay. She said she felt sick and groaned. She had to puke. She didn't feel all right at all. We went home to let her get some rest. Back home, she flopped down on the bed in my room and seemed to have slept immediately. Shivani and I discussed the events that took place and wondered if the ghost would follow us. Deciding that it wasn't a possibility, we went to the kitchen to make something for dinner and wait for Vidya while she completed her nap. The experience had shaken me, and I decided that I would take a bath before I cooked to calm myself down. While undressing, I noticed some scratches near my breasts, which definitely were not there earlier. They were shallow and didn't even hurt. I checked my top to see if it was torn while getting in through the windows or anything like that. There wasn't any sign of scratches on it. It just didn't feel normal. Dropping the idea of bathing, I showed the scratches to Shivani. She checked herself to see if she had any scratches on her body, and there were 3 irregular scratches on her stomach. She said she didn't have them earlier. They really looked new as they were bleeding. They didn't hurt as well. We decided to tell this to Vidya and see if she was doing okay. We went to my room, and at the door we heard someone moaning in there. Both of us were shaken visibly and slowly opened the door. Vidya was sitting cross-legged on the floor and seemed to be meditating again. This time she was saying something which we had heard as the moaning. I was rooted to the spot. Shivani went and shook her, and she got out of the trance-like state again. I went to the kitchen to get some ash from the essence sticks, which is considered to be holy, and put it on Vidya's forehead. Then all of us did a little ritual of praying and asking the spirit to leave her alone. There were no incidents of her getting lost in that state again. When we mentioned to her about the scratches that we had, she checked herself to find scratches on her stomach too. It was too much of a coincidence, and we decided that that was one pervert ghost we had encountered, and on seeing 3 girls, it had decided to have some fun. I'm 28 female, so this story is from years ago. Let's just say my name is Jenna for the story's sake. I usually visit my family's cottage up north every summer, and on the occasion on July 4th, Thanksgiving, etc. It's a waterfront cottage facing a lake surrounded by a dense forest. It's located on a private beach, so you see your neighbor every once in a while. Everyone comes up north around the same time, so it wouldn't be uncommon that a chat with others, and thus everyone knows each other. My cottage sits between 2 others. One is inhabited quite frequently, and one is abandoned to my knowledge. My family and neighbors know that European family, possibly Polish, German, etc., owns it. I just assume that they hold on to the property to maintain some sort of tangible asset in the United States. Back when I was young, around the age of 18 to 20, my cousins, brothers, and I would get away from our family to smoke weed in the abandoned cottage to avoid any sort of scalding. It was fun, an empty cottage with some furniture that was a time capsule from the 80s. We would peer around and look at the old round lovesea, the dark den, the main living room that joined the dining area, and the cute little kitchen with old wine glasses laying around. Those were resoundingly acknowledged that others have been through the abandoned cottage as well. They were smoked joints on the ground, footprints, all beer bottles with modern labels, and furniture was always moved around from one position to another. However, the cottage was never spruced up. It was never cleaned and well organized. So we knew that the owners weren't coming by. It was random explorers, perhaps other teenagers, doing the same thing we did. During some curious investigation, we saw a basement. We opened the door and saw a staircase that led to a floor that was pure dirt. It looked like a cellar from what I could see. I stood at the bottom of the stairs looking down and saw exposed brick. Nothing particularly interesting. Of course, we would freak each other out by saying someone lives down there, that there was a serial killer living there, or there was a corpse collection buried under the dirt floors. So none of us would go down there with our independent conviction. It would have to have been a dare or a display of bravery. One day around Thanksgiving, 4 of us, regulars and my brother, went to the abandoned cottage to smoke some joints and gossip about family. I don't see my cousins much, only during special occasions. So we sat at the tables in the dining area to smoke, chill, and chit-chat. Of course, the topic of the basement came up. We laughed and talked about who would go down there, who would most likely survive the serial killer living beneath us. waiting for his next victim to enter his abode. We turned and noticed that the basement was unlocked, but this was unusual since it was always locked. The one occasion where it was unlocked was when we took a look, or one of my brothers would go down there to freak all the girls out and prove his macho, so to speak. We would always lock it afterward, purely out of the feeling of some sort of reassurance. We chalked it up to other teenagers just like us, and all of us girls made my older brother get up and lock the door. He stood and looked us all up and down, jokingly saying something along the lines of, "You guys are just scaredy cats. Always get a man to do the scary things for you." We laughed, but he was the guy. If there was someone down there, he would be the most likely to defend himself. He's a big guy, 210 pounds and 6'5". He took me to be 3 steps before there was a knock. It sounded like a knock on a hollow surface. I instantly looked at my brother, who looked smug. He said, "You know, if you ask me to do something for you, don't mess with me while I'm doing you a favor." I looked around, waiting for one of the other 2 girls, my cousins, to fess up and mock his macho. It seemed like everyone was soundingly confused, anxious, and waiting for the same thing I was. I guess my brother saw the reactions and didn't see mine, and concluded that I was the source of the suspicious knocker since my back was turned in. "Very funny, Jenna. You think you are such a joker," my brother said with a chuckle. I turned to him, and I guess he saw my anxious face as well. I guess he could read me well. I thought that maybe him walking on the old floors unsettled some of the structural integrity of the building. Maybe he was one of our parents talking with us. I didn't think it was from a foreign source. I clipped at him, "Just go and lock the door." He continued walking towards the door, but it opened slightly. He stopped dead in his tracks immediately. "We're going now, forget that door," one of my cousins said. We all got up from sitting on the tables, gathered our things, including weed, beer bottles, and phones. We quickly ran to the front door, not daring to look back. My brother was the last of the anxious conga line that was created by the bottleneck of the lone exit. I heard significant footsteps coming from the back of the cottage. I thought it was my brother. I turned back, and I swear to God I saw a hand opening the basement door. "Oh my God," I yelled. "There's someone in the fucking basement," I managed to shakingly say after running down the stairs that led to the front door. "What?" everyone else said. My brother looked back. Holy shit. He held onto the sides of my arms to push me to go faster. We heard a foreign boy say, "Jeff is only the king." We ran faster, dropping balls, pipes, and shoes. We ran so fast that our flip-flops fell off. I knew it wasn't any of us, not even one of our parents. It was a low, stern voice from afar. My brother was right behind me. We made our escape to our cottage, thoroughly flustered and terrified. There was a homeless guy in there. I fucking saw him. My brother out of breath, I managed to say. I guess it was common knowledge that the place was abandoned. I wouldn't neglect the possibility of someone taking refuge in there. I don't know if the guy went into the basement when he heard us coming, then got tired of sitting on the dirt floor, then scared us. I don't know, it's a private beach, so you would have to know the specific location to be able to understand how to get there, and then also know that there's an abandoned property as well. We ran to our parents after proactively hiding our weed stash. Our priorities are certainly well placed, and told them our story. They called the police, and we watched them afar to see what the fuck was going on. I guess the guy left. The police came to us and told us no one was in there, but they let us know to file some sort of report regarding the abandonedness of the cottage. I think that there are some sort of laws that demand that the owners should be used in the cottage and executing upkeep. None of us really cared for being the carers of the situation, so we never filed such a report. At the end of the day, I understand that some people just want to have assets. It would suck to lose out on good property in a nice location. I think they might come back one day since our neighbors know the family. No one else has ever filed a report to my knowledge. I guess the experience didn't shake up my brother too much since he went back and gave me details. He found some dead squirrels and dead baby raccoons just laying in the living room. He said they looked quite fresh. I think that they died of natural causes. But how do 2 different species of animals just die in the same place? I asked him if they were mangled or obviously killed in some way, and he said no. He said the baby raccoons had fur. I did some researching, and I know that baby raccoons aren't born with fur, so I deducted that they were alive for some time and somehow died in the living room. I don't want to know if something or someone killed them in there, or maybe killed them in another place and then brought them in there to give some sort of message to any oncoming visitors. It was the end of the year, 1966. My family moved to a village-like place just 50 kilometers away from Calcutta after my father's retirement. The place is called Lalnagar. It wasn't a crowded area, but all lifestyle facilities were available there. We rented a bungalow which was a 2-minute walk from the main road. An abandoned bungalow stood beside ours, unoccupied for the past 20 years, as we learned from our landlord. It had a 2-story structure and a spacious garden filled with foliage and rubbish. All doors and windows were locked from the outside. From the first day, an eerie feeling and discomfort overcame my mother due to the presence of the abandoned bungalow next to ours. On the other sides, there were no more houses since the area was not very densely populated. We spent our first 2 days comfortably in our new home, but occasionally I noticed my elder brother's face looking very serious. It seemed like he was pondering something significant. At first I assumed it was related to his studies and upcoming exams. However, one day proved me wrong. After a week, he asked me a peculiar question. "Kamala, have you seen someone in that closed house?" I didn't understand the question at first and replied, "Which house? What are you talking about?" He said, "The house right beside ours." I was astonished and said, "No, I have not, but that house has long been abandoned. Whom have you seen there?" He explained, "I think someone is still living there. Every afternoon for the past week I've seen an unknown woman in a red sari standing in front of the closed window and weeping, staring at me. It seemed like she wanted to say something. At night I hear the weeping sound from my study room, which is right beside that house's window. It disturbs my attention during studies, so I'm very disturbed and I'm thinking of changing my study room. To hear this from my brother shocked me. I rushed to the window, attempting to see something inside the closed window of that house. At first I couldn't see anything, but after persistent effort, I heard a low weeping sound of a woman. There were no other houses around except ours and the abandoned house. Who could be weeping? It clearly seemed like the sound was coming from the deserted house. I shared this with my parents, but they laughed it off, attributing it to our disturbed minds. I too dismissed the case. However, one night a serious incident occurred in our house. It was a Saturday night, a new moon and drizzling. I was sleeping in my bedroom alone, my brother in his study room, where he used to sleep from the first day, and my parents in another room. Suddenly, I woke up to a weeping sound, a female voice, as if someone inside our house was weeping. I left my bedroom to investigate, and after some time I realized the sound was coming from my brother's study room. Slowly, I entered and saw my brother sitting on his bed, weeping, covering his face with his hands so I couldn't see him. I was puzzled. My brother was weeping, but how did his voice turn into a female voice? I asked him what happened. He didn't reply, nor did he look at me. Thinking he couldn't hear me, I approached him, repeated the question, and placed my hand on his shoulder. Suddenly, he looked at me, and seeing his face, I screamed loudly, waking up my parents. My brother's face was pale, like that of a person in deep distress, and his eyes were red. Abruptly, he started to laugh wildly in a woman's voice, got off the bed and advanced towards me. I cried again, and I don't know what might have happened if my parents hadn't been present. They caught him tightly, and my brother fainted. He had a fever for the next 2 days, occasionally uttering phrases like, "I will not forgive you." Surprisingly, his voice resembled that of a woman. All treatments failed, and he might have succumbed if not for a holy talisman by the name of Hanuman, a Hindu deity, that we gave him. Afterward, he became completely normal. We left the place and rented a flat in Calcutta. The incident will remain etched in our memory until our demise.